Welcome to Grub and Grace. I am Mark Flower, and we will be talking about servant leadership with my guest, Brandon Forman. Servant leadership has manifested and been personified by countless people throughout history. When you think of people who exhibited servant leadership, you may be inclined to think of Martin Luther King Jr. as a major leader in the civil rights movement with a non-violent approach, or possibly Mother Teresa through her service to poor communities all around the world, and also Nelson Mandela, who advocated for peace and a free and equal South Africa. Biblically speaking, you can also see figures like Moses by advocating for the Jewish people who were slaves in Egypt. Ebed-Melech in the book of Jeremiah, who took a grab-a-towel style of servant leadership. And of course, Jesus, whose core teachings embodied servant leadership and who lived it out through example. Recently, Reverend Mark Feldmeyer introduced me to another individual who exemplified the essence of servant leadership. Simone Adolphine Weil was a French philosopher, mystic, and political activist who, from a young age, developed a strong sense of altruism, which has been attributed to her father having to leave several times to serve in World War I. She was a natural rebel against societal constructs, deciding early in life that she would need to adopt masculine qualities and sacrifice opportunities for love affairs in order to fully pursue her vocation to improve social conditions for the disadvantaged. She became a teacher, believing that literature and knowledge was a revolutionary tool, giving workers ownership over their heritage and revolution. She would tell her students that it was an error to reason in place of finding out, that philosophy was a matter of action based in truth, and that truth must be based in something lived or experienced. Despite being raised in an affluent family and having her own privileges, she would leave her role as a teacher and alongside her political activism chose to work in Renault automobile factories. The union of thought and action, word and deed, became for Weil an enacted will of service. Robert Greenleaf developed the philosophy of servant leadership in the 1970s. The term describes leaders who develop, empower, and ensure the well-being of people. This concept is rooted in the idea that people feel included and valued when they are encouraged to grow, and individual growth drives collective success. Servant leadership is a mindset that reflects a servant-first mentality rather than a leader-first mentality. Greenleaf considered that a leader-first mentality was often large, complex, powerful, impersonal, not always competent, and sometimes corrupt. Greenleaf put forward 10 principles of servant leadership. They are listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, commitment to the growth of people, and building community. Not everyone exudes these principles of servant leadership, but that isn't to say that not everyone has the capacity to embody these. It takes time, practice, and a commitment to implement them into your own life. What I've noticed is that people who personify servant leadership principles often humble themselves and don't seek the limelight. In the case of my guest Brandon, I had to ask him specifically to talk on this subject, as I don't believe he would have brought it up on his own. Most people who are servant leaders are people you've never heard of, and that may be how they prefer it. After all, if they were worried about fame, fortune, and achievement, they probably wouldn't really be servant leaders, would they?
I'm going to crack this open in the microphone.
Yes.
Here we go.
The
First beat of the night. Ooh, that was nice. Welcome to Grub and Grace. I am Mark Flower. I am here tonight with my guest, Brandon Forman. Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Glad to be here.
We're going to be talking about how selfless servant and how to be let me do that again. A selfless leader, I guess, right? Yeah, that's what it is. We're going to be talking about a selfless leader and what that all entails, what that looks like. Just hopefully we'll get some cool conversation from that.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good.
So, Brandon, tell me a little bit about yourself. Like, what do you do?
Yes, sir. Coming up in February, I'll be able to say I've been working in public libraries for 20 years. Literally, it was just the first job I ever got. When I was 14, started working as a library shelver back in my home state of Florida. You know, it was the typical job, just walking around with the cart, putting the books away. That's also what gave me exposure to just so much more content and whatnot. You know, as you're putting away this stuff, you want to look at it. Because otherwise, it can be a bit of a monotonous job. Funny thing is, though, when I was younger, my parents would always say to me, so you think you're going to work in a library your whole life? No. And, 20 years later, yes. Yes, I literally am. But I love what I do. As I got older, got schooling under my belt, and had more experience with larger library systems, I realized that my main passion was with youth services. Mm-hmm. As cliche and cheesy as it can be, I love serving children especially. Mm-hmm. I just... they're the future. I mean, they literally are the future. When I'm too old and my bones are tired and I can't contribute as much as I like to contribute to the world, I want to know that I helped give the next generations all the resources they need, or access to the resources, the opportunities I would like them to have, that they deserve. Just every chance to succeed if possible from the scope of what I do. So that's a lot of what drives me. And then in conjunction with that, I just like serving people in general. That's why I am a, library professional 20 years, but I consider myself a public servant first. I also worked in Parks and Recreation for a bit of time, and I really adored that as well. And that falls under the same umbrella of being a public servant. I think I got it from my dad primarily. He was just a guy who wanted to help out everybody in the neighborhood, drive my mom nuts, because he would get into 30-minute conversations with the cashiers, the guy at the deli counter, just like he was everybody's friend. He could have a conversation with anybody. And I think I got a lot of that from him. And I liked how it filled his cup to help people and be good to people. And that's very much the same for me. That specific point I'll be interested to talk about later in conjunction with selfless leadership, servant leadership, because there's a bit of a paradox there, but we can get into that later.
Mm-hmm. Right on. No, I love that you said that you worked at Parks and Rec. I can't remember if you actually told me that before.
I can't either. We've had so many conversations. I don't know if that's among any of them.
Because I actually worked in Park and Recreation too.
Oh, very cool.
It was kind of one of those, late high school through college summer jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Get done with school, come back home, work Parks and Rec, hang out with the little kids, teach them, ball skills and just skills in general of how to get through life. And it was just one of the best jobs. I'll never forget that. My times at that job. It's just been such a fun time. So I can see why you love what you do and why you keep doing it as well.
Yeah. It's something that when you go home at the end of the day, you can just feel good about. Mm-hmm. I like it when people, either in the line of selfless work or they're working with their passions and whatnot. That's one of the reasons I enjoyed about hearing all the different pursuits you had, is because you're so passionate about it. And it's that I can get behind. It's funny when I've worked with friends kind of or when I've had friends outside of my direct realm here, who are a bit similar interests to mine, and they start telling me about what they do, kind of more typical, I hate to say this, but typical jobs that you hear. I get this kind of glazed look over my eyes where it's hard for me to grasp certain jobs that people can do 8 hours to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week. Respect, you do what you got to do. No judgment whatsoever. But I'm certainly happy that I found something that I can feel passionate about.
Oh, yeah. I've worked those 8-hour jobs before where, I still do what I love to do. Like, I've worked in like marketing and the creative visuals and that sort of thing, like graphic design, video, photography, all that.
Yeah, that's artistry too.
Yeah.
I'm always going to dig on artistry.
So I guess I can't really say that working corporate for me has been, kind of a drag and just, monotonous. There have been monotonous times, but there are other jobs like you're talking about, like, doing accounting or something like that, which nothing wrong with that. And there are people that are very passionate about it, but there is a lot of monotonity to it that can get old for some people. And it, for sure, for me, it would. I just happen to be fortunate to be in more of that creative space.
Yeah, I love that. And like you said there too, any job can have the drag. My job has that. There's times where I think you've heard me say this when I get done working with the storytime groups, and I got to tell them, all right, I get to go do emails now. I get to go work in correspondence. And granted, some of the time I'm emailing and corresponding about things that are very interesting to me. But when I have to hit a spreadsheet, I'm never going to get excited about that. It's got to be done. It's got to be done. Those parts of the job have to exist. But by and large, I'm quite fortunate. I'm glad to hear to sing for you.
Oh, yeah. So going back to Parks and Rec, which character would you be?
Ooh.
I'm just switching gears here.
See, I'm not surly enough to truly be this answer, but I mean, I want to say Ron Swanson.
Everybody wants to be Ron Swanson.
I want to say Ron Swanson. He's the man, you know? I'm nowhere near as handy as him either. But where I relate to him the most is that, I mean, everybody quotes it. It's overdone at this point. Son, I need to stop you there. I think what you heard was, I want a lot of bacon and eggs. I want all the bacon and eggs. Or when the steakhouse closes and he's crying outside saying, what do you think they did with the leftover steaks inside? Like, his appreciation for some good steak and his personal freedoms, his just very straight shooter attitude, and how fiercely protective he is of the people he does care about. Yeah, I want to say Ron Swanson. Probably got a little bit of Donna in me too. Treat yourself.
You gotta treat yourself.
Yeah, you gotta treat yourself. I enjoy a little bit of splurging and enjoying that. So maybe I got some Donna in me too. Hopefully I have very little Jerry in me, but I bet I have more Jerry than I like to admit.
Yeah.
Or Gary. Or Larry. Whatever his name ended up being by the end of it.
One of the Aries.
Yeah, one of the Aries, yes. I don't know. Do you, I don't want to use foul language on this, podcast
no,
here.
feel free to. I mean, I haven't so far, but I'm not limiting it to. Yeah, it's very sensitive.
I won't. I won't do it either way to play it safe. But I'll use this. I'll censor myself. I am, however, no matter what, a punk butt book jockey, as Leslie Knope would refer to. A lot of people say that when they're like, "Wait, so you work in libraries and you worked in Parks and Rec?" Don't they hate each other? No, they get competitive with each other in a fun way. But there's actually some government systems out there, counties, cities, where Parks and Rec and libraries are under the same umbrella and like actually combine with their budget and resources. And I think that's cool. They're a lot more closely related these days than they used to be.
Oh, for sure. Let's go. I don't know if that's a good transition or not, but we'll go ahead and
we're gonna transition. That's all right. Just star wipe, like in the old PowerPoint presentations.
Star Wars star wipe. Yeah.
There we go. Yes.
or fate, whatever you call it. So we will be talking about servant leadership and what that looks like. Kind of what kind of practices. What's good about it, what's bad, pros and cons, misconceptions, all that kind of stuff. So I'll just jump into this first one here. How do you define servant leadership, and what distinguishes it from traditional leadership models?
So, let me answer those questions exactly in the order you asked them. So I define servant leadership as leading where the priority is not yourself. And maybe the priority is not even the organization itself. It still has to be a priority to an extent. Otherwise, and that's if you're in a work type setting, of course. Otherwise, it can be aimless, or it just won't align with what you need to be doing. But it's where your main priority actually is the growth of those, for lack of a better term, I'm going to use the term under you. Those who you supervise, manage, etc. Those who are under you, being more focused on their growth, their gain, seeing them build up to achieve success, and genuinely wanting to do good by them, rather than being primarily focused on just achieving the goal, potentially at their expense. Or, of course, there's probably more malicious forms of leadership. But what I would say is a more malicious form of leadership, which is using the people underneath you for your personal gain, where you look at them more as tools to help accomplish your own personal goals. To me, selfless leadership, servant leadership, is quite the opposite, where maybe even sometimes at your own expense, you want to help those who are serving underneath you grow and do better. Ideally, that shouldn't be that far off from most models of leadership that organizations, groups, factions want to strive for, but we both know that's not true in the real world. In the real world, a lot of times you have people in leadership positions who are out there for themselves. Or if not themselves, and they are trying to go, their main goal is to bring success to the organization, company, again, faction, whatever you want to say they work for, but with very little regard for the well-being of those that are working under them. That is what I would say would be the main contrasting difference between them. That's really well said. I love that.
No, I love that you mentioned that like selfless leadership, or like a servant leadership or servant-minded leadership is not too far off, or shouldn't be too far off than other leadership models. as a leader, you would think, you're leading the group, you're showing them, you're kind of teaching them the way, you're trying to corral everybody in a way. And I feel like a lot of leadership models kind of follow suit in that. The selfless servant, or like a servant leadership model, kind of more builds people up, where you make them the priority, to build them up to be the driving force behind what you're doing. So when I was looking this up, the servant leadership model as a leadership philosophy was developed by Robert Greenleaf in the 1970s. I think I mentioned that before when we were just kind of chatting. It prioritizes people over profits, like you were talking about. Servant leaders develop, empower, and ensure the well-being of people in their organizations. There were a couple, how do you say it? Key distinct categories within his servant leadership model.
I can believe that.
Greenleaf put forward 10 principles of servant leadership. They are listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, commitment to the growth of people, and the building of community. Do you have any thoughts on kind of those principles as he had kind of put them?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is funny that this is something numerous workplaces I've been with. Mm-hmm. I've had continuing education, learning development type programs, curriculums, things like that. And a lot of them take their, and again, I have a master's in library and information science too, so going through academics, you get a lot of this, what I'm about to say here, where you get a lot of these titling and specific good detailed labels put onto concepts. And I've always appreciated that, because for me, Mark, it's interesting. I find, before we started recording, I told you about a workshop I attended. Sometimes I could be more engaged. Sometimes I feel it's content that I've already been well covered. One of the things, though, that when I'm being presented with information like this, that is most rewarding for me, is being able to have the appropriate terms and wording to put a name to what I've believed in and the concepts that I'm following. And it's also validation to know that professionals in the field, subject matter experts, are basically validating that, okay, these things I've been following on an instinct. And granted, it's instinct that's been subconsciously, I've been an influence over years of the life I've lived and the people I've surrounded myself with, schooling, my work, my career, etc. As I look at this here, healing, awareness, listening, stewardship, commitment to the growth of people and build a community, those are all eloquent ways to put what I believe in. So yeah, I agree with all of that, absolutely. It's funny, too, though, how it completely depends on the context when you use certain words, of if you can do them positively, with a positive connotation or negative connotation. So the one word that sticks out to me a lot in here is the word persuasion. It's funny how I think on my own, just from my own personal experience, I've almost always associated that word with a negative connotation. Because when I first think of persuasion, I think of the concept of trying to persuade somebody against something they truly do not want, do not like, or I'm trying to convince someone of something that's very uncomfortable for them. But that's not necessarily what persuasion has to be. Persuasion can be somebody who's struggling or conflicted on a concept, an idea, or where they want to go with something. And persuasion can be a very positive force, where you are helping somebody make that decision for themselves and move forward so they're no longer stuck in a mental limbo. A lot of times I've had the same thought with the word charisma and charismatic. For a lot of personality tests I take, and again in the workplace, we do personality types. We get labeled with these colors that then match up with certain traits. And a lot of time I get this certain color that says, you have high interpersonal skills, you can be very charismatic. And they're using it positively, but when I hear charismatic, I can't help but feel icky about it. Because when I think that, I think like what politicians try to pull. Charismatic to me, it can be genuine. But for some reason, I think of it in a disingenuous term. But I have to realize that's just my own personal bias towards that word. So really, with me opening my mind to the other way persuasion can be viewed, along with the other terms and principles here, yeah, I 100% agree that these are all very important principles and essential to servant leadership. Especially, this is one word that's always been near and dear to me, is empathy. I've always been an empath to a painful degree at times. When you're really in tune with feeling what others are feeling, you can overextend yourself. You put yourself in a hurtful situation. But I wouldn't change. I wouldn't change that. I'd rather be empathetic and deal with the burdens that can come with it than deal with than not being in tune with that side of myself.
Gotta love these microphones, right?
Yeah, they pick up everything. That's impressive.
When you said the two that kind of struck out to you as more of a negative connotation, you said persuasion, which I'll talk about that in a minute, but charismatic, it usually comes to mind charismatic preachers. And there's actually preachers that take pride in being a charismatic preacher, or had past, and it's just been kind of one of those things that have over the years become this kind of yucky term, especially when used in that way. I mean,
maybe that's where I got that feeling.
Not everybody feels that way, probably. I know a bunch of people that feel the same way that I do, and I can probably list off names. But for me personally, it's just kind of one of those yucky terms where it's just like when you think a charismatic pastor, you automatically associate it with like scandal and with like this misuse of and just ingenuous and all that kind of stuff. With persuasion, it honestly made me think of Knights of the Old Republic, the old Star Wars game.
For the original Xbox.
So Knights of the Old Republic, old Xbox game. A lot of that game, so you can either pick a light side or a dark side path, and depending on what path you pick, it changes the gameplay. And so one of the big parts of the game is using persuasion, using your force powers to persuade different characters in the game. And if you're going down a dark side path, obviously you're going to be persuading them for selfish gain, selfish desire, selfish, everything that kind of comes with that. If you're going down the light side path, you can do more of a selfish kind of gain, but you can persuade in a way to encourage people to pick, help you out or pick a path that might help the overall story, help people in their communities and that sort of thing. So that's what that kind of makes me think of, where yes, there is that negative connotation that you can pull from that, but there also is that really good side of it too.
Well, it's like in my line of work, same thing. Like I can have the purest and most honest of intentions with persuasion and helping persuade somebody against a mindset. And when I say ignorant, I'm not actually using that in a derogatory sense. I mean the truest definition of ignorant. The example I use for to try and convey what I mean when I say ignorant is an adult like you or myself sees a truck coming barreling down the road and we walk in front of it. We're stupid. When a child who does not understand the consequences of large object hits me, I'm hurt, seriously hurt. When they walk in front of a road, it's ignorant. It's a general ignorance of not knowing. So one thing, for example, that I find myself persuading people in time is very often, in my line of work, I get parents coming in searching for books for their children. And they're usually around like pre-teen age, maybe early teens, like 13. And, they want their children to improve their reading and expand. And they will be adamantly against graphic novels. And I have to speak out on that, and I'll be respectful. I don't push to a point where they'll become uncomfortable, but I have to mention, honestly, if your child's reading anything, you're winning here. And graphic novels have just as great, excellent content as anything else. They're going to be building their reading schools without a shadow of a doubt. Just because there are images, it's not undoing or diminishing their literacy growth they're going to have. So that's an example of me persuading, but I have no ulterior motive other than the fact that the studies and research shows that, yes, reading this type of content is just as good for your kiddos. Of course, I want them to expand to other traditional books too. It's good for them, but there's nothing wrong with it. My only goal is to help them achieve their goal, have their child increase their literacy skills. And if they come from a place of ignorance, they're trying their best. They think that, okay, if I let my child just read comics, it's not going to do them any good. It is my job then to try and persuade them tactfully that that's not the case. It's going to do a lot of good. You just have to open your mind to it. So, that's an example too of persuasion, being able to, I might be trying to push somebody past something they're usually comfortable with, but it's genuinely for their betterment with no ulterior motive.
Oh, of course. I love that. Persuading them in ways that for their betterment, and even if it's ways that you don't necessarily would, go to as, this is how I always see it, and they've got to do it this certain way. If they want to do it another way, like reading graphic novels, they're still reading it. I love that. You just got to be careful because you don't want your kid reading Junji Ito or something like that.
Yeah, I'll never, if a parent tells me, or caretaker tells me the parameters, darn right I'll respect the parameters, and I just use common sense. I've had 12-year-olds come up to me with the series Attack on Titan. Mm-hmm. I love the series. I think it's a great series, but I will have to look and say, are your parents nearby?
Yeah.
I need to run this one by them. I gotta let them know what's in here. And at the same time, as a library professional, my job is to provide people access to resources, not tell them what they can and cannot read. I'll give them all the information to work with so they can make their own decision. And I just know the typical parent probably is not going to be comfortable with a 12-year-old reading that. I came from a home where my mom gave me Stephen King's It at age 10.
Okay.
And I like to think it didn't affect me negatively. I always had very advanced reading skills at a young age, so I think it helped. But I recognize, too, that not everybody comes from a home like I did. And I don't want to impose my personal experience on others. So, it's just tell them, this series can be quite graphic, violent, large naked titans attacking and eating people.
Biting people's heads off.
Yeah, like it can be heavy.
But
and
honestly, from that comic, even though the violence is there and it's very graphic, there is a lot of really good content written in the story. Is written really well in the character. Story. You can even pull some politics out of it too and apply it to real world, the parallel, 100%. Comparison, but you can learn a little bit of, politics through a graphic novel like that, It's a more easily digestible way,
for younger people to pick up on those concepts and themes. Again, tying it back, I'll persuade, but I won't mislead, and I think that's another important principle, I guess you could say, of it's not a principle he listed. I mean, you could probably pull out from one of his 10 principles there how it connects, but genuine, not persuading with misleading facts and information. You got to be a straight shooter for people, in my opinion.
So you've seen a lot of what servant leadership can look like. Of course, you're attempting to live at least some of that out in your own life as much as you can. What are some misconceptions about servant leadership that you've encountered?
Oh, yeah, it's servant leadership, kind leadership, all that. And again, this is me. When I speak, I only speak from my heart and my personal experience and my personal worldview. I don't claim that my worldview is the correct one, but it's been working for me okay so far. It's what makes me feel good, and I have some fantastic friends in my life and fantastic memories to reflect on, experiences, and I like to think that is a result of the way I've chosen to view the world and live my life. So as I say this, I don't want it to come off as this is the way you have to be, but it's the way I think is the best way to be. But many times, I meet peers where they'll say, oh no, you gotta put the company first. You can't care too much about your people. I understand the idea of not letting yourself burn out and taking on the burdens of all your people constantly. But I refuse to choose what could be considered an easier path of looking at them as tools and means to an end, just to achieve my own success or the organization's success. A lot of people out there think that if you care too much about your people, you can't succeed, and that it is a faulty way of leadership. It's a inefficient style of leadership, and you got to be more ruthless, cold-blooded, have the end goal in mind at all times without considering people's feelings, personal hopes and aspirations. And I'm sure that there's probably industries and organizations where unfortunately that mindset's probably true, where too much caring probably doesn't achieve what the organization's goals are. I don't know, this is coming from a place of ignorance myself, so please don't take this with a grain of salt. But I can imagine how, I don't know if the correct term would be telemarketing companies, all that, people that are running pure call centers where all their people are supposed to do all day or call and try and sell a product or convince somebody to subscribe to something and whatnot. I'm sure they just need high quantity calls. They want a lot of calls. They want to hit those percentages where if you got a lot of calls going out, a lot of people doing it, the numbers will eventually play to your advantage and you'll get your subscribers, your buyers, things like that. But I think in a lot of industries, maybe even most industries, research will show you that taking care of your people, making them feel valued, accomplished, like their voices can be heard to whatever extent that might be, will ultimately benefit the organization. Because when you have happier people who feel fulfilled and feel like they matter, they're going to naturally want to put more of themselves out there and try harder. There's something I hear a lot in a lot of organizations with, evaluation systems for their employees where, you don't want to give your employees high marks because then they're going to rest on their laurels and think that they're great as is. I've just never seen that personally. When I've seen people get high marks, they're then even more motivated to keep those high marks and they don't want to fall back. My personal experience, I've never worked with someone who gets a review that's fantastic and then all of a sudden their work degrades and they just start coasting. They got that fantastic review because that's how they operate. They aren't going to change just because they got that fantastic review. If anything, they're going to ride that high of realizing they were recognized and being acknowledged. And they're going to want it to happen again. My opinion. So the misconception, I think, or some people think it's an inefficient style that doesn't benefit an organization. And that's just not true, in my opinion, and what a lot of research shows.
Yeah, when you talked about you take care of your employees and you know they want to put more back into the company, it kind of makes me think of Dan Price. Have you ever heard of Dan Price? Mm-mm. So he had kind of a radical approach to how he ran his company, and what he did was he took a mega pay cut, brought his salary down to, I forget what it is, but basically he raised everyone's up so that the minimum annual salary is something like $80,000 or something like that, which is unheard of for any company. So you get a much smaller range of annual salaries. So it's not like this, you know, like 20,000 versus like a 800,000. It's more of like an 80,000 versus like a, you know, 400 or 500,000. So it's a much different scale, and from what I heard from people that work within his company is that they want to put more towards his company. They actually want to work harder. They want to, you know, every time that they are working, they want to just put that much more effort into his company, and his company is thriving because of that. I'm sure there's other factors as to why it's, you know, thriving and why other companies thrive as well on different models, but I just thought it was interesting because I love that kind of radical approach towards you know, taking care of your employees, and that'll pay itself back.
I don't know about you, Mark, but if somebody's taking care of me and treat me right, I got their back. I forget the type of personality test it is. Ugh, I've taken so many in my life, but there was a certain personality test I took that it gave me 2 numbers, and what it meant is that I am what's called a loyal skeptic. And at first I was like, well, skeptic. What does that mean? That almost sounds bad. But no, what it means is that I am initially skeptical of leaders in an organization. Like, just as a flat rule, I'm skeptical. And I could be skeptical of anybody, actually, not just leaders, like anyone. And it's not like necessarily a jaded way. It's just cautious. The loyal part comes in where once I get into the comfort zone of somebody, it's like, okay, this person's good people. They have good intentions. I like them. I trust them. At that point, then, it switches to the loyal side, where it's like, okay, you bypassed my barriers, my personal guards of skepticism. Now you have my undying loyalty. With any good leader I've had, that's how it's been for me. I go in all the time cautious, like, okay, let's see the way this person leads, if I can buy into it. My current boss, for example, who was just promoted recently, actually, which I'm ecstatic about, she's got my loyalty. Behind closed doors, I'm talking good about her. I think very highly of her, and it's because she's earned that loyalty from showing me that she's an excellent person with great values. I highly respect the way she conducts herself in the work environment, and help me if I ever hear someone badmouth her. They can't do that with me, because I won't let that happen.
You're going to back her up.
I'm going to back her up. It's the same thing for friends in my life, family. Once you're in with me, I got your back, period. One of the best compliments a friend told me, because I can be a bit of an introvert and a homebody, and I just get busy. I can tire out easily, and you know, I don't always make it to every outing and things like that. But my friend Tom back in the day, he's like, Brandon, I know you can't hang out all the time or do things all the time, but he's like, you're the guy I know that if I'm stuck somewhere at 2 a.m. in the middle of the night and I call you, you're picking up and you're coming out to get me. I was like, that's exactly it. I was like, I might not always be there for just all the fun times, but when you need me, I'm there. And that felt good. That felt good to be recognized for that, because that is how I operate. As long as I know my people are doing good and having a good time, I can relax. But when they need something, I got them. Yeah. So you just talk about Dan Price there. It makes sense to me why his people want to put in good work, because if they feel like they're being treated right, and especially if they have any self-awareness and awareness of the world around them, and realizing that other companies are not experiencing that, other people, employees are not experiencing that, yeah, you're going to be grateful. And if you're doing gratitude checks for yourself, you're going to do everything you can to make sure that company continues to succeed, and that everyone around you, your leader, are all doing well.
I love that you said that you're a skeptic, not in a, you know, I'm just not trusting anybody in any way, but it's just kind of like, you know, I just got to ask the questions first. I got to kind of get into your comfort, or my comfort zone around you first. Mm-hmm. I feel like maybe on a different level, and you know, there's all these multiple levels is why we connect so well. But because that's like, I feel like you're speaking to, like, you know, who I am too. I feel like I'm the exact same way.
I picked up on that. Mm-hmm.
It also makes me think of Karl Barth. So I don't know if you know Karl Barth at all.
Yes.
great, theologian, philosopher, but his story with Bonhoeffer. So Bonhoeffer had been going through a whole journey of, being in Germany, being a German nationalist, coming to America, talking with, I forget his name, but he's a French he's a Frenchman that was studying at the same school he was in America. They had tons of theological and philosophical, conversations, and that really shaped who Bonhoeffer was, as well as other people that he had interacted with while he was in America. Coming back to Europe, he heard about Karl Barth and wanted to engage with him and connect with him. So he goes to Karl Barth's, one of his classes, and of course, this German nationalist, as far as Karl Barth is concerned, he's still a German nationalist. So he's very skeptical when he enters the room, because he's like, he's the only German in the classroom. So very skeptical. But then as soon as Bonhoeffer approaches him and starts asking questions, Karl Barth immediately got this impression like, no, you're a good person. Like, you're asking the right questions. I feel like I can kind of drop my guard and be myself around you. And that's kind of what I was thinking about when you were talking about this. So yeah,
I mean, that's what happened with again, you and me, and again, that's me naturally, if anybody. And I mean, the majority of people, the guard doesn't get to completely come down. They're always going to get a genuine nice me, but they're not going to get all the guards coming down. If you happen very easily, because one, I just had to see how you talk about your family and your loved ones. Very genuine. You can see it in your eyes. Talk to me about your worldviews, the things you appreciate, the things you value. That all stuck out to me. Oh yeah, absolutely. And I was gonna, and then the other thing that, I mean, those are like the most important things. Like when I was like, okay, can I respect a person? Can I dig on some of these values? But then it's just a matter of we got a lot of the same taste. We got like, you dig on, I dig, and the things we like, the similar things we like. When you like really unique media out there, literature, film, TV, anime, anything, that tells you a lot about somebody. It tells you what somebody has an understanding of, what they're open-minded to, of course, what they enjoy, what they dig. So you give me a person here who's got great values, loves their family, doesn't just blindly buy into things, but thinks about things analytically, but at the same time likes to give things a chance. And you combine all that with, this guy's got a good taste. Yeah. You're going to get into my loyal point there. You're going to become one of my good friends. But the thing is, you can't force that. That it has to happen naturally. But it's funny, though, because once it happens, it's just like that. It's like a switch there. And you've seen me with others. You've seen me in my workplace. You've seen me. I like to be good to people, period. Mm-hmm. But whereas a lot of people get Mr. Brandon, and that's a genuine side of me. It really is. You get Brandon. Mm. And there is a distinct difference there.
And I'm glad I do.
Oh yeah, my friend. Absolutely. It's funny too. I actually, when I told certain friends, meeting up with you, over people over my life that I met through work, like, I feel like that's crossing professional standards. And I disagree with that entirely, because I say, well, first of all, I was like, you realize we work in a library, right? Everything we do for people's free anyway. I'm not coming in and giving somebody a special VIP story time or a discount on a checkout. I'm not extending your checkout books for books or anything more than others. Mm-hmm. What I argue is I am fortunate to work in a job, and as in when I'm talking to other library professionals, that we work in a job where I genuinely get to just be selfless with the people I serve. There's nothing that we're not trying to make money. We're not trying to do anything. I just want to take care of people to the best of my ability. So that already removes a barrier of everyone being a customer. Then I get to work in a line of work that encourages me, you know what? Don't treat everything like a task. Just talk to people. Be good to people. So when I talk to someone like yourself where I can have a genuine connection, yeah, I'm not going to say, oh, sorry, I can only talk to you at work. Baloney, no. I'm coming over. Mm. We're going to go out for drinks. We're going to have dinner. Like, if you could be so fortunate to meet a good friend, I don't care where you meet him. When you meet a good friend, you stick with that. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't know if if we worked at a car dealership or something that was cutting you special deals, I guess you could say that's unethical maybe. But I don't know. It's funny to hear that. I think some people just use it as an excuse to say, they either explain away why they struggle to connect with people, or they just genuinely are completely uncomfortable with the idea, and they need to say, oh no, that's a professional violation, to make themselves feel a bit better about it and feel validated with it, when really it's nah, you just don't want to connect to people. And that's okay. That's respectable. But not how I operate.
Yeah. No, definitely. So I want to be respectful of your time. I do want to get through these last two, even if it's just like little bits.
Oh, please give it to me.
So I'm going to switch up the question that I wrote down for number 4. I'm just going to ask, do you know, so my listeners might be wondering, for this, selfless leadership kind of philosophy, are there anybody that, in the present or from the past, historical figures or just people, well-known, figures that you think represented this selfless leadership really well? And I can kind of kick you off if you need a little time to think.
I mean, there's numerous ones. The problem is trying to narrow it down to who would be my best example to cite. And I don't want to just cite good people. I'm trying to cite the leadership specifically. So one person I'll say here, and for those wondering, and again, in my work environment, I will never discuss politics or all that because, frankly, it's irrelevant. Because I genuinely want to serve everybody, period. I don't care political alignments, things. But I'm actually unaffiliated. Ask me about a case, and I'll tell you how I feel about it. So this is with no bias here. But one person that came off to me as a selfless leader was John McCain, for example. He would look at a situation analytically, and even if it was against what a lot of his party would prefer, if he looked at it analytically and he realized, no, this is going to harm people if we do this. Like, even if I don't agree with this system that was set up, if we tear it apart just suddenly, it's going to do more harm than good. And he pushed back against that. That is a selfless servant leader, realizing it could hurt his reputation, hurt his credibility with his party. But he realized this is not what the public deserve. It's not going to be good for them. I respect that. In my personal life, I've seen it numerous times. I'm actually going to reference a few library directors I've worked with over the years that I've had a lot of respect for. I won't name names, even though I'm speaking of them positively, but individuals that have put themselves in very tough situations, but because they believe in the creed and principles of library work and providing content for all, they would put themselves in hard situations where they have to push back against the concept of books being removed from a library, things like that, simply because they genuinely believe in that. They want everyone to have access to things. If you don't think I think there's books in the library that I would never read and I think nobody should ever read, yeah, I'll never voice that to somebody, and I'll never advocate for a book to be removed. I don't care how much I disagree with something. Someone has the right to have access to it. And these leaders I've seen who've defended that right, I have a lot of respect for that because they realize it's for the good of the public. Even though it can create a lot of turmoil and stress for them. To me, that's selfless. That's doing what's right. Because sometimes being selfless and servant isn't just to literal people. It's to concepts, to principles. And I have to believe in that one. You could go all the way back to Abraham Lincoln. He was a smart one. Lincoln didn't stand on the platform of we need to abolish slavery simply because it's what's right. He knew that pitch wasn't going to work. He had to paint it as an advantageous situation.
That's where you bring in the persuasion.
Yeah, absolutely. But in his goal was simply that a person shouldn't be treated like that. A person should not be owned by another person. And again, I know there was plenty of people who also agreed with that, but plenty of people he infuriated. His assassination was based on many reasons, but he put himself in a perilous situation for what he felt was right and right by the people. That's a selfless leader right there. That's a servant leader. You could say the same thing even for Fred Rogers when he first had the African-American mailman dip his feet into the pool. Mm-hmm. When that was such a controversy for black individuals to be able to use the same pools as white individuals. Mm-hmm. That doesn't necessarily have so much time to leadership, but you could say he was a leader because he led his production crew, his TV crew. The show was named after him. If things went down, that's his career, that's his well-being, that's his livelihood. But again, he strived for what was right. That's a servant leader, I think, myself.
Right on.
Yeah.
No, I loved all this answer. I love that you incorporate the personal leaders that you've seen in your own life. And I think it's so easily missed sometimes by, in our own personal lives that, we're so busy with our own lives that we miss these people in our lives that are playing out this servant leadership right before us.
Absolutely. And I mentioned earlier that there's a paradox in my own life, and I appreciate you saying that I strive for that What I feel conflict over is if I can truly say it's selfless. The reason I ask that or mention that is because it genuinely gives me pleasure and pleases me to look after my people and take care of my people. And the thing is, I just genuinely don't feel that burden a lot of time. It can be, I guess, a burden like very infrequently to me. But at that point then, is it selfless? If I'm telling you, I get pleasure out of it and it makes me happy, is that technically selfless? Like, do I have to be suffering more, for it to be selfless? That's the tricky thing, because I am getting something out of it. I'm getting fulfillment and satisfaction. So I don't know if I can say it's truly selfless. Like, I'm not getting any material gain. And yes, I want the well-being and benefit. I want my crew to benefit. But I'm getting satisfaction out of it. I'm getting happiness out of it. So you could almost argue, well, it's not entirely selfless then, because it's giving you this very positive reaction and you're going for that. So you can kind of argue it one way or another, It's
a very philosophical question. And I feel like, the way I see it is that I think it's okay to feel that, like you're saying, that pleasure, that acceptance, that good feeling that you get out of helping someone or being, a selfless leader to them, putting them above yourself. I think where the transition comes is if you let that good feeling get to your head and it becomes more about yourself than it is about them. And I think that's where you have to constantly, struggle with it. Mm-hmm. You struggle with tons of stuff in your life. And I think that's just one of the aspects of it is, if my aim is to put them above my own, needs, and their needs above my own needs, then, and even if I do feel good about it, I think that's being selfless. If you put their needs above your needs and you feel good about it, and then you start saying, well, look how good I am, I think that's where you start crossing that line where it's not so much selfless, that you start to cross that line into, I'm getting something out of it myself, and I'm fulfilling my own needs with a veil of putting their needs above mine.
Right. Absolutely. I appreciate that perspective. Thank you.
Yeah. It's a tricky line.
Yeah. Yeah. It's balancing that line.
So,
no, please give me that other question. I want it.
Real quick. So
let's take our time with it.
We probably already answered this, with everything we've already talked about, but what are some practical steps that individuals can take to cultivate servant leadership in their own lives, whether in their personal relationships, workplaces, or community settings?
Ooh. That's a loaded one, in my opinion.
No, I'm just looking for a little snippet. Whatever you want to give me. If you want to talk for the next 10 minutes, I'll finish my beer.
Boy, oh boy. See, that's a tricky one for me. It's, you want to talk philosophy again. It's been argued a lot of the time with, it's for someone to want to be better or go towards what we consider a more pure way kind of living, ethical kind of living, selfless. I don't know. It's like the same question as, can a tiger actually ever change its stripes? If somebody's not already by a certain age, let's say, because you're like being molded as you get older. And I believe people can grow across their entire life. I also think there's some people who, once they're a certain way, they're going to be that certain way for a while. But let's say it's forced then. Let's say you want to be servant, you want to be selfless, but you're not necessarily going to feel it. But you want to do it anyway. Like, you analytically think, no, I recognize that this is a good way to be. I might not agree with it. I might want to be selfish, but dang it, I'm going to do this. Just try baby steps. Put somebody else first. Try not prioritizing your own needs. Realizing that do what they call sonder. Have you heard the term sonder, Mark?
I've heard of it. You remind me of the definition of that.
Yeah, so sonder is... Okay, when you go driving down the street, heck, when you come to the library, you go in there, the people you don't know personally, the random patrons walking around the building, the people on the public computers, the older woman checking out at the self-checkout, the people picking up the books it holds. You know they're people. Like, you're not ignorant to it, but you're not really putting much thought into them. They're kind of like the NPCs, the peripheral characters in your life. The sonder is to truly stop and think, oh, that old woman who seems a little flustered checking out right now, she's got dreams and aspirations, she's got heartache, she's got heartbreak, she's got struggles, successes, she's living a full life. The sonder is to stop and truly realize that while you're a main character in your own life, everyone's their own main character, and they're living full lives with all those layers to them. I think if you want to take a step towards being selfless and a servant leader, sonder. Realize that those hopes and things you want for yourself and the things you want to achieve, the people working under you are just the same way. And just try for a bit. Just put them first. See what it goes like. Take those small steps. Just a little small thing. Give them a little small something where you put their needs before your own. See how it feels. See how it plays out. And see what you get back from it. Take those small steps and do it a little bit at a time. And maybe at one point it'll feel entirely genuine and you'll realize, oh, I like being this way. This is the way I should be. I like seeing others succeed. People just genuinely deserve that. Because otherwise, I can't teach somebody how to care about people. But maybe if you take some small steps, you'll naturally come to that conclusion on your own.
Right on.
Yeah.
I'll have to remember that. Remember that out of Sonder.
Oh, to Sonder, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I try and think of it all the time, no joke. I've had a lot of friends say that when I drive them around that they're impressed, and I do the driving mostly because I don't do well with other people driving me and I get car sick and yada, yada, yada. But they're always like, you don't have any road rage. You don't get mad. And I half joke and say, well, I don't think it's just because I'm kind and patient. It's also because I'm a little disenfranchised. I just assume people are going to drive like maniacs. So when they do it, it's like, it happens. But I do try and think, the person who just cut me off, maybe they're not a jerk. Maybe it was a parent driving. Their kid said something, or two of their kids were fighting in the back and they had to look real quick, cut off somebody, while driving. Just because somebody did something that frustrated me, made me angry, doesn't mean they were malicious. I just try and give that extra little bit of thought.
Right on. No, that's good practice to try to implement in our own lives.
Yeah, and I just think you have a lot of wolves inside of you, and the wolf that feeds on anger and frustration, I don't want to feed that wolf.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's good. Well, I think this is a good spot to end. I don't want to hold you up too much later, but dude, Brandon, thanks for coming over. Thanks
Mark,
for recording.
It's been a pleasure. I look forward to doing more in the future. I've really enjoyed this.
We do have more episodes that we do a plan that we've been talked about, so I really look forward to those talks in the future. Especially, I think the next one that we're going to do, I think it's going to be really, really good.
Absolutely. And then I'm going to quote, it's cheesy because so many podcasts, films, shows end with this, but I love saying this again. I think I've told you before that one of my heroes in my life is Fred Rogers. And I love what his mom said too. Look to the helpers. When you're feeling disenfranchised or down on life and people, look to the helpers. It'll give you a lot of faith.
That's it for today's episode of Grub and Grace. I hope you enjoyed our discussion with Brandon Forman about servant leadership. If you like the content that we create, be sure to rate and review wherever you can, and make sure to follow us on our social platforms on Facebook, Instagram, and X. Until next time, stay curious, keep an open mind, and celebrate the traditions that bring us all together.